Las Vegas. We're now joined by Eli Lederman. He now works for ESPN. Talk about a comeback. He was working for a media outlet, and all of a sudden, poof, it was gone. Eli, proud of you, man. It's great. What was that like when ESPN called you and said, we want you to work for us?
Certainly exciting, and certainly in the circumstances of where I'd been before that. And but it's amazing how things change, things come full circle. I started talking to you guys when I was working at the Tulsa World covering Oklahoma State just 3 years ago, and here we are now.
So I saw on your timeline on Twitter that you reposted what Ollie Gordon, the statement he put out. We discussed that off the top of the show, Big 12 Media Days tomorrow and Wednesday, and we wondered whether or not he would be here. And I thought he might. I think it's a Heisman Trophy candidate, come out in front of everybody in the media. Your thoughts about Ollie Gordon being there, being here this week in Las Vegas?
I guess I'd say impressed would actually probably be a word I'd use, both in Ollie Gordon, who obviously made a terrible mistake, but take it away from the college football context. When you're an adult, you got to own things like that. So impressed on him, and actually impressed with Oklahoma State as well, because anyone who's been around college football long enough knows that it doesn't take much for a program to do everything they can to keep one of their star players, even without anything else going on, away from the media. This would have been an opportunity certainly for Oklahoma State not to have Ollie Gordon out in front of the cameras and things like that. But knowing enough about how Ollie interacts with the media, and again the fact that I think this is sort of a mature move by all involved, I think it was the right thing, and hopefully it's an opportunity for him to speak about the experience and where he is now, because as you said, this is a Heisman Trophy candidate, preseason Offensive Player of the Year in the conference. It's no small deal, and I think that was the right move.
Eli, you're covering recruiting now, which is even wilder than it used to be and tougher. This was a lot of big time commits. DeCorian Moore this weekend. Was it Riley Pettyjohn? Like all of that, and I know that it's early to say, but Texas was in on a lot of these guys and didn't get them. Was that kind of surprising that they had a rough weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's getting their licks. I mean, Ohio State, hard to feel too bad for them with the class they're putting together, but they were having a rough week until Riley Pettyjohn committed. But yeah, Texas, I think Zach Moore, there was a lot of optimism about that one happening for Texas, and he would have been huge. I mean, would have been the highest ranked commit of Steve Sarkisian's tenure, would have been the highest ranked commit, at least according to our rankings at ESPN, since Jonathan Gray in 2012. And so it's a miss. They're still assembling quite, an impressive class there. And I think everything Steve Sarkisian's been doing has only been moving them upward. But, those are the misses that at the very least, when the rankings come out at the end of the year, maybe the difference between, whether it's top 5, top 10, top 15. But at the same time, we all know that those rankings only go so far when it comes time to playing football in a few years.
Eli, another big commitment last week. Ty Hawkins flipping from TCU to SMU, 4-star quarterback. Down in Texas, people just for the last 30 years have not really cared about SMU for the most part. They got hit with a death penalty and faded, and now they are in the ACC, and they are going to be able to swing the wallet around and go and make big time pushes in this era. What do you make of what SMU's been able to do as far as making some noise, and how much noise do you think they're capable of making when all is said and done?
Yeah, well, this is why you go to the SEC. It's why you get your money organized. This is, SMU is back because this is what I think what a lot of people expected, whether it had been these guys this summer, but, a school that we know has a financial base and now the standing, in a Power 4 conference to do this stuff. And, Ty Hawkins is huge. I know TCU was really excited about him, kind of, maybe worried at some point that a bigger program would realize what they did about him and his talent. The fact that it was a crosstown rival, that can't feel good. And maybe that's an introduction into, a new world that everyone's living in DFW, but a huge weekend for SMU. And it wasn't just him. Jermod Odom was huge. Jalen Cooper. They've made their class has transformed in really the last, week or so. And that might be the new reality now at SMU.
Baylor got a kid from the wide receiver from Shadow Creek, who's a highly ranked player, was a quarterback there. They just got Cam Morgan, from South Oak Cliff, which is kind of against some of the big boy names. Do you see them turning the corner? They kind of now have things right, even though they still have work to do to kind of play catch up?
Yes, I mean, it's work to do. You mentioned Kamari Morgan. That's a big get for them. And he's, right now the top guy in their class. That's huge. We know it's Dave Aranda. This is it's going to, a lot of it's going to be about what he does on the field this year next. So, the class he's signing right now may not be the thing that determines the direction of the program. But I think that is, a signing like, an ESPN 300 commit like Kamari Morgan, that is a step in the right direction toward getting them back where they've got to go. But, a July win is not going to help them in the fall. And, for all we know, not projecting too far out, but if things don't get right on the field, right, who knows where this class will be come December. What
team in the Big 12 in particular has surprised you with their prowess so far?
That's a good question. I think, TCU really has, but, with Ty Hawkins at the top of it, had a really impressive class. I think, it's hard. Yeah, it's been impressive, but it's hard not to keep your eye on Colorado and see what they're not doing in terms of recruiting and some of the misses they've had. But I think on the whole, and maybe I promise I'm not steering clear of your question, but I think the Big 12, and as fascinating as it should be on the field, where I think in any given year we're really not going to know who's the cream of the crop there, and it's probably what's going to make it so fun. I think recruiting wise it's the same, because these schools by and large are sort of maybe a tier or two down in terms of recruiting from the very, very top, and they may get picked off at times, but they're going to be recruiting kind of on those margins to where hitting right, and that means for every program in the country, using your money wisely, all of that is going to be so crucial across the Big 12. So the same way I'm excited to watch that league on Saturdays, I think it's been really fun to watch the recruiting in this conference, because it's you're not necessarily talking about all the 5 stars Alabama's going after, but they're all swimming in the same pools, and it's mightily competitive.
So Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, etc., teams that have done well, teams that are highly ranked, teams that will be at the end. And even if a team or two, like if Texas has missed out, they'll eventually get pretty much not everything they want, but they'll be right there in the mix. A&M, Oklahoma. Then I saw, when it came to the team rankings, Rutgers. What's going on with them?
It's pretty unbelievable. They're on pace right now. I mean, you're talking again different kind of recruiting than Alabama and Georgia are getting up to, but they've got more 4 stars in their class than I think they've had combined in the last 15 years. And it's at least worth noting, only because we always talk about Rutgers, right? It's the complete afterthought in the Big Ten. The school that doesn't fit in, even less so now when you've got USC, Oregon, Washington kicking around there. But they're making moves, and again, you got to credit some of that to NIL, but a lot of it goes also to Greg Schiano and his staff and what they've done. A lot of the guys they're keeping home are in-state guys, and it's an impressive in-state recruiting effort. They've got to get it to signing day. I think that's kind of the caveat. It's a caveat for everybody, but I think especially there when you consider some talented guys who had offers to go what we would all call bigger and better places. But if they can land that plane, it's a pretty tremendous recruiting effort by that staff.
Eli Lederman with us, ESPN.com, on recruiting and much more. So let's get into football. We're here in Vegas, as you know, for Big 12 Media Days tomorrow and also on Wednesday. What are your thoughts about this? The 4 new teams coming in from the Pac-12, Texas, Oklahoma are gone, and what this conference might end up being.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really fun, both in the near term and the long term. This year, who comes in to compete off the bat? You might look at Utah probably as that team. I think Arizona is going to struggle a bit picking up the pieces after Jed Fish, even if a lot of the talent's still there. Colorado is going to be probably the most fascinating story in the conference, for better or worse. The newcomers are going to be really fun, and I do think the dynamics are going to change. And it's simply, even just from a fan perspective, or people who work in the line I do, new locations. I mean, it was cool last year going to BYU and having UCF in Norman. and things like that. And as you introduce these new schools, I think new rivalries will bud. I mentioned, these are teams that are competing in the recruiting trail as well. So I'm excited about this conference. It may, if it's going to be the third conference, across the country behind the SEC and the Big Ten and that whole consideration, I do think it's going to be one of the most fun, because I just think, as always, anything can happen in the Big 12, and that's only more true now with 16 teams in it.
Eli, though, the question remains, say they've got a 10-2 team and a 9-3 team, and both those teams are really good. Unfortunately, probably at least this year and maybe next, they're not getting that second team in, no matter what the records are of the teams around them, because they're looked down upon compared to the SEC and Big Ten. Yeah,
and there's probably parts of that are not fair, and it's always been the case maybe of the Big 12. And then there's other pieces where I think, top to bottom, this league, at least this year, is not going to be so deep that, that 9-3 team, for instance, has 3 really good losses or some really standout wins. They might be really good teams. Anyone who watches the Big 12 knows are no joke. Been that way the past few years. It seems like that not everyone gets the respect they deserve. But we've watched the committee work enough, and if you assume that it sort of is going to stick that way, then yeah, it would be hard to imagine that a 9-3 Big 12 team whose biggest wins are maybe one of the other top teams in the conference, but not stacking 4 or 5 ranked wins. Just you might not be able to do that in the Big 12. It may be hard to get in at 9-3.
Eli, congratulations on the opportunity at ESPN. Keep it up. Thanks for your time. We'll be in touch. Appreciate it. Have a great rest of the week.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Eli Lederman, ESPN.com. Brandon Marcello